Hi guys, as you know, the multi-action hotkey or button is being added with the winter update in a few days. So I've been spending some time over the past couple of weeks playing on the test server and preparing some uh, ideas, setups for making a multi-action hotkey work for each vocation. So this video we're going to cover some ideas that I have for each vocation. If you want to skip to your vocation, you can just use a timestamp down below. They will be split per vocation, so you can do that. In addition to this, I tried to come up with any good ones, but I almost definitely missed some out. So if you've got some suggestions, I didn't cover something but you think is good, leave a comment. If I agree with your opinion, if I agree with your suggestion, I will add it to the pinned comment on this video. So I'll definitely have a pinned comment on this video over time with some extra hotkeys that I forgot about that people have suggested. So in addition to watching this video, make sure to then check out the pinned comment down below with suggestions from the viewers. And with that out of the way, just a quick recap on what the multi-action button is. It's not a macro. It's not a replacement for, the game doing something automatically for you. It's basically replacing multiple hotkeys with a single hotkey, or multiple buttons with a single button. So for example, you can map like shown here by Tipsoft right here. You can map, for example, Exori Mass, Exori Gran to a button, and whenever, and the priority is like the first one is like if it's available, then it casts that one. If it's not available, it goes to the second one. If second one is available, cast that one. If it's not available, it goes to the third one. That's how it works. And yeah, basically, I hope you understand how it works. I don't want to go too much into how it works. I just want to go into the examples of what you can do with them. So let's dive right in. First of all, we have a couple of generic life saver ones. Now, these only work if you have one of each food on you. If you have multiple blueberry cupcakes or multiple rotworm stews, whatever is first in your multi-action, you need to have one of, because the game skips over it if there's no more left. So for example, you have one blueberry cupcake and 10 blessed steaks. What the game will do is it'll try to use the blueberry cupcake, then it'll notice there is no more blueberry cupcake, and then as a second state, it will go to blessed steak. So that will work fine. However, if you have 10 blueberry cupcakes and 10 blessed steaks, it'll go to blueberry cupcake, it'll use it, then there will be 9 left, and then the game doesn't recognize the cooldown of the way cupcakes and steaks work, because it doesn't have like this timer on the hotkey. It's like an internal game cooldown, and it will just keep trying to use the blueberry cupcake on 9, and it will never progress to the blessed steak. So something to keep in mind. If you want to make these hotkeys work, you can, but you do need to have just one of whatever is the first in the multi-action, and then you can have however many you want of the second one. It will only use it once, of course, but you can basically combine like an emergency macro for those two. And yeah, this is kind of misleading, I guess. If you only works if you have exactly one of each food used in the first slot, right? If it has the second one, doesn't matter, or the third. Well, if you had 3, if you wanted to add something else, I don't know, NPC food for like 3k or whatever, then you'd have to have one of these and one of these, and then however many NPC foods, right? Basically, you need to have you need to run out of them for it to go to the next one. Okay, so that's generic stuff like every vocation that you can consider. Moving on, we have a knight. The first one is a combination of mana potion and Exura. Instead of having those two separately, if you are spamming both of those all the time, alternating, right? Most EKs go mana potion, Exura when hunting like most stuff. You can combine this and just have one button that you're pressing, and you have to spam it a lot. I don't know if it's super useful. It probably is quite useful for easier respawns. However, you probably still want to have separate mana potion and Exura hotkeys. So this could be maybe like your default one that you kind of use in box, but you still want a separate mana potion one, for example, when you run in between boxes, but you're full health, you don't want to be casting Exura. And you want one for Exura, for example, when you're using Supreme Health Potion to couple that with Exura, for example. So kind of helpful. I think it will be a nice hotkey, but it's not sufficient. You'll still need a mana potion and an Exura one. Further on, we have a healing potion. So for example, Supreme, coupled with Exura Gran Eco, which is like the strong wound cleanse and is the one with like the 10-minute cooldown or whatever. You may as well use it, right? And then your regular Exura, whichever one you're using. depending on your level. And this is like your main heal. When mana is not a consideration, you've got full mana, but you're like losing health, then you would just be spamming this one in the box. Here we have a mass wheel rotation. So once you level 500 plus, you have Exori mass cooldown reduction. You just go Exori Gran, Exori mass as an action, and that's your whole rotation, right? You just go in there, bam, 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 bam. You won't after the rebalance. Hopefully, you won't even have to use Utito, so it would be enough to let you just be casting this button for like the whole hunt, unless you need like etc as well. Very nice. Alternative. Sorry about that. Alternatively, you can have two hotkeys if you don't have the mass wheel. So for example, you can have Exori Gran hotkey that you're spamming, and then alternating it with like an Exori Mass, Exori Min second hotkey. Or you can just go easy mode, forget Exori Mass, and just have Exori Min as your third one in here. That's an option as well. It's kind of for you to decide what works for you. But basically, there's Exori Gran plus Exori base as like the sort of two first spells in multi-action is probably very useful. Here we've got like a finisher combo. So for example, we've got Exori Amp Core. If you have it in the wheel, then you can have Exori Grant Echo, which is Annihilation, and you can have Exori Horror as the third one. So basically, whatever's off cooldown, it'll be cast as a finisher on a single monster. Exori Amp Core, very good for like groups of monsters as well to finish off. But yeah, that's a pretty useful one as well to use at the end of the box. And similar, here you have like a finisher too, potentially if you kind of don't know what your hotkeys currently are, what your cooldowns currently are, because you've not been tracking it. So you can try to use Annihilation. If that fails, you can go for Exori Gran. If that fails, you can go for Exori Mass. This could be a regular Mass as well, or Exori Hood, whatever. You can practice and figure out what works for you. Plenty of things you can consider here. And finally, you could also try to combine Utura Gran hotkey with your regular Exura. I'm pretty sure, I haven't checked, but I'm pretty sure like this Utura Gran has the same hotkey as its duration, right? So you can just be casting now with your Exura. Whenever Utura Gran comes off cooldown, you'll cast it. Could be tricky if you're like dying in a box and you have 10% health and suddenly Utura comes off cooldown and you cast that instead of your Exura. But I still think this is a nice hotkey as well. Basically, instead of having your default Exura hotkey, you can have Utura Gran / Exura. Anyway, that's it for the night. Some ideas. For Paladin, you have like a main emergency heal, basically, which will be like your USP coupled with Exori Grand Sand that you can just basically be spamming when you're in the box. You've got luring, sort of like a default luring rotation. So you've got Exevo Mass Sand followed by AoE Rune, so your Avalanche with user own cursor. Then you can have like a box one, which is Exevo Mass Sand plus Grenade plus AoE Rune with use on target. Once you're in the box, so you could switch between two rotations depending on what it is you're doing. And then you've got a couple of lazy boss rotations. Those, by the way, sound very fun to me. And this would be really cool. Like, for example, this one. So Utito on tier 2 gets cooldown reduction and then it stops working. So you can't do it once you have tier 2 Utito. But if you're a low-level Paladin with a maximum tier 1 Utito, this is a very, very chilled rotation. Obviously, this actually does assume T2 Exori Grand Con, of course, with the cooldown reduction. Same here. And you can just be going, Exori Grand Con, Exori Cron with like permanent Utito, or you can replace the Exori Cron with Sudden Death Rune, or Exori Sand, for example, depending on whatever boss you're killing. But then you basically just stand in there as a Paladin, pressing one button for the whole boss fight. Sounds pretty relaxing to me. Same here, like an alternative one. You can have an Exori Grand Con with Exevo Mass Sand and Exori San. For this one, you'd have to be casting Utito separately, but I think that's probably fine as well. I mean, you can just be casting it on a second hotkey, for example, whatever, right? Some ideas for mages. So we have a couple hotkeys here. You can have an Otamo Vita plus Otamo Potion or whatever it's called, right? There's the potion that you use to basically reset your Otamo Vita cooldown. I think this one is probably like one of the most useful ones in the whole game. Like, this is a really good combination that works perfectly with multicast. Every mage, I recommend you have this one. Second of all, you can combine Max Vita with Vita instead of your regular Max Vita cooldown hotkey. So this will allow you to do that. If your Max Vita is on cooldown, you don't just puff. Instead, you will still cast regular Vita, right? And you still, of course, need your regular Vita hotkey in case you don't want to be burning the Max Vita cooldown. But your regular Max Vita cooldown that you have right now, you probably want to replace that with a Max Vita / Vita multi-action. Just so if you burn your Max Vita, you can use the Vita. And this is very similar to this next Druid hotkey, which is Grand Sire Sire. You want to replace your Grand Sire hotkey with a Grand Sire / Sire. So again, if you mistime the cooldown, your Grand Sire is on cooldown. You don't just puff and don't do anything. Instead, you will just go for a regular Sire, right? You could consider Mass Res Sire on a Druid. For example, if you like team hunting and your kind of team depends on you to be doing mass res, this could be your default healing spell, right? You use mass res every 2 seconds. Then when mass res is on cooldown, you use Sire on the EK. Also very, very useful. Someone suggested in my Discord a Sire / mana potion as well. So if you're like low on mana, you can be just spamming this one. You'll be both healing and getting mana. Not sure how useful this one's going to be, but sounds kind of interesting. Then for Sorcerer, you have a couple of extra suggestions. If a spot allows like a wave playstyle, you could have like a flam wave followed by a energy wave combination. So you're just spamming that one and you just basically casting the waves off cooldown. You could combine that with a rune as well in case both are on cooldown. Fairly rarely that would happen, presumably. Additionally, you have a different one that you can have. These are 3 different ones that you could consider. You can consider energy wave plus ultimate healing rune on cursor in the battle list. Same with the fire wave or rune plus UH. This is something I saw people test, which is interesting. You can have both rune, for example, avalanche or GFB, and UH on cursor use, and you can be spamming that on like the EK on your battle list, and it'll be throwing those both alternating every 2 seconds, the offensive cooldown, the rune, and then every other second it'll be doing UH. So you can definitely combine UH with like your offensive spells somehow. Pretty interesting as well. Pretty interesting. Definitely something to consider. And finally, we have the Monk one. This is the one that I've played with the most, obviously being the Monk main at the moment. So kind of like the Paladin, you also have this USP / Spirit Mend, your main emergency heal. So you get stuck in a box and you just spamming this, you feel like you're dying, you just spamming this multi-action, just one, very simple. Then you have a Builder rotation, which would be Chain followed by GFOB followed by FOB. Very good. Now, it is worth mentioning that you kind of need to be keeping track still mentally of what's coming, because for some of these you want to turn, for the wave, for the chain, it doesn't matter. So do keep that in mind. It takes a little bit of getting used to. I will warn you, if you're going to be doing this on live, take a little bit of time to hunt something easier. If you go into like your hardcore respawns with this day one, you're probably going to die. Like, you need to get used to the way it works. It takes a little bit of time to get used to it. Then we have single target builders. You could consider chain with GFOB with Mystic Repulse. It's pretty nice. You could consider throwing Forceful Uppercut in there somewhere as well. Then you need a single target spender hotkey, probably Devastating Knockout / Spiritual Outburst or Sweeping Takedown, depending if you are running Spiritual Outburst or Sweeping Takedown. And this actually reminds me that you probably kind of might consider also a Spiritual Outburst / Sweeping Takedown AoE spenders. Now, this is a bit tricky. I don't know if I definitely recommend this one, because you kind of want to cast Outburst when it makes sense, not just off cooldown. So try it out, but potentially you kind of want to have those separately when hunting for AoE spenders still. Similarly here, you could consider Sio Spirit Mend. Actually, I'm not sure this one works. I don't know who suggested this one. I don't think this works, because they both have a 1 second cooldown each. Oh, no. This is not the Druid. This is the Monk. So indeed, this works. So if you are... Yeah, actually, this actually works really well for team hunting, right? So you have your Sio on the EK, and you've got your Spirit Mend for when the Sio is down. So this is actually a very nice team hunting healing multi-action. You're just spamming this one. You'll be healing the EK every 2 seconds. You'll be healing yourself every 2 seconds. Hopefully that's enough to keep you alive. As soon as you notice that it's not enough to keep you alive, you just switch like this one, for example. So yeah, this one could be pretty damn good. And finally, you could try to... I haven't really figured out the right hotkey to put this on, but Mentor Over could also be coupled with some of these, so that you kind of cast it without having to think about it. This will be game changing in Vocation Rebalance anyway, so probably not going to be super relevant for very long, but for a few months until Mentor Over gets changed in Vocation Rebalance, you could consider sticking that on the end. Like, for example, you could consider... I don't know, maybe you could consider sticking it as a third hotkey here. I'm not sure if that would work. That would maybe work. Or maybe as a third hotkey here. I'm not sure. I feel like maybe you can, if you have a separate mana, but if you have a separate potion button, you just have USP, you could consider sticking Mentor Over at the end of it. So you pop in your mana because you're run out of mana, so you're spamming USP, and then every 60 seconds you'll still cast Mentor Over as well. So yeah, something to keep in mind. I would probably try to fit that in somewhere because casting mental over and keeping track of it is kind of a pain in the ass. So definitely there is some room to automate it basically by using this multi-action as like a final spell in some chain of multi-actions, where you just kind of cast it every 60 seconds without really thinking about it. Anyway, this is it. This is what I had for you today, guys. These are my suggestions. If you have any others, like I mentioned at the start of the video, please let me know in the comments. If I like your suggestion, I will definitely be adding it to the pinned comment below this video. So yeah, thank you very much for watching. Great addition to the game. And yeah, see you in the next one. Let me know in the comments what you think. Bye-bye.